Welcome to Blooming Wand, your home for grounded spiritual content. I'm Emily O'Neill, evidential psychic medium, intuitive healer, and coach. And on this episode, I want to talk about a film that I recently watched, Wes Anderson's The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. I watched this on Netflix, and it is based rather on a short story by Roald Dahl. And I have not been able to stop thinking about this short film. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend watching it. With a short 40-minute runtime, it's one of those rare films that manages to be both whimsical and deeply spiritual at the same time, which those are two of my favorite things. And on the surface, it's about a wealthy, bored man who learns a mystical technique to, quote, see without eyes so he can cheat at gambling. But what unfolds is a profound meditation on intuition, transformation, and what it really means to see. I watched this film from the perspective of working as an evidential psychic medium, and the film, it really hit home for me in several ways. So let me kind of dive into that. Henry Sugar stumbles upon a doctor's manuscript about a yogi named Imdad Khan who can literally see without using his physical eyes. He can see through cards, through objects, through anything. And Henry, being entirely self-absorbed and greedy, immediately thinks, perfect, I'll use this technique and get rich at the casino. So he spends 3 years, which ironically or coincidentally is the same amount of time I committed to intensive mediumship development and training. I was like, I've spent 3 years learning a mystical technique as well. So that kind of gave me a giggle. So he spends 3 years practicing an intense meditation technique, which is staring at a candle flame, then visualizing it with his eyes closed until the mental image becomes as real as physical sight. Eventually, Henry masters this technique. He can see through cards and he wins fortunes effortlessly. And then, well, he feels absolutely nothing. The money is meaningless, the challenge gone. He's achieved exactly what he wanted, and it's left him emptier than before. Does this sound familiar to any of you? I can tell you that I have pursued things with great vigor, and achieved my goals, and I've felt like, why did I do all that? And I think it's because I wasn't in line with my why or what my intentions were. And I'm sure some of you have experienced that too. I think it's a very common human experience. And I feel like the story of Henry Sugar made me think about, why do we do this to ourselves? Now, some of us aren't learning something so we can cheat at cards or like win a bunch of money at casinos. Maybe we've learned a lesson, around that, but we've all done things and then achieved things and then not felt so as fulfilled as we thought. And I think that this is sort of a nice story that can indicate the importance of knowing what your intentions are and what your why is when you're pursuing something with great vigor or pursuing anything at all. And it's easier to fall into this trap than one might think. Societal programming, trauma, perfectionism, certain behaviors or beliefs can drive us to do things that maybe aren't aligned with our authentic self. And so we might end up achieving quite a bit in life and then not feeling fulfilled. I feel like this is kind of a tale as old as time. So this is the point where the film kind of gets interesting. Henry's feeling empty. He's like, I've trained, I've got all this money, and I feel nothing. And I was looking at this part, from the lens of those of us that do intuitive work. So the ability to see without eyes isn't really about X-ray vision. Instead, it's about accessing a different kind of perception entirely. Think about intuitive work and the skill that it takes. Intuitives are not simply using their physical senses to gather information. Our abilities go much deeper than that. We're accessing the unseen but deeply felt realms. We're seeing without our eyes, hearing without our ears, and knowing without logical deduction. Now, in the film, Henry's 3 years of meditation practice, so learning to quiet the chattering mind and develop intense inner focus, mirrors the discipline required for genuine intuitive development. You can't rush it, and you sure can't buy it, so you must sit with yourself and confront your own inner noise and learn to access that deeper awareness that's within all of us over time and with consistent practice. But here's the crucial part: the ability itself is meaningless without the right intention behind it. Henry gains this extraordinary power while his inner world is a mess. He's driven by greed, disconnected from his purpose, and unable to see the suffering of others or the emptiness of his own life. His unhealed parts and his unintegrated shadow completely distort his vision, even as he develops the supernatural sight. It's only after he confronts his own emptiness, that feeling of he achieved everything and he felt nothing, he felt empty, which occurs after a police officer calls him out for recklessly throwing money off of a balcony and nearly causing a riot. So, this is kind of a turning point in the film. This is when Henry finally sees clearly, not just through cards, but into the truth of what matters. So, this is something that I think about a lot in our work, or the work we do here at Blooming Wand, or the work that some of you are doing with me. How do our unhealed parts, or our shadow, our unintegrated shadow aspects, like I said, impact our ability to truly see? To see without eyes, but also to see clearly our own needs, wants, and desires, what our intentions are. We can be genuinely intuitive, genuinely connected to spirit, and still have our perception filtered through our own unresolved stuff. Our trauma, our fears, our ego needs, they don't disappear just because we've developed psychic ability. In fact, sometimes having these gifts without doing the inner work can make things worse because we might use our abilities to bypass our healing rather than support it. I think that those of us who work in the field of intuitive work, psychic work, mediumship work, or even self-development, we have to do our own work if we want to be in service to others. So this is why community is so important. I have my places that I go for my help so that I can show up for those that I work with. And that's so important to me. And I know that the technique of intuitive development is pretty straightforward. Honestly, it's not what I would call hard. It's simple, but simple doesn't mean that it's easy. It does bring up, or will bring to the surface, things that need to be tended to. And that is like, and this is what my mentors always said, that's like 90% of developing your intuitive abilities, is doing your self work and understanding where your hurts are, where your pain is, where your limiting beliefs are, where your wounds lay, and then taking care of and tending to them. So, Henry's greed made him blind to his own spiritual emptiness, his needs, and the dignity of others. It made him blind to what would bring him fulfillment, and it made him blind to the higher purpose that his gift could serve. Even with supernatural sight, he couldn't see what was right in front of him until he did the inner work to integrate those wounded, fragmented parts of himself. It was the emptiness that called him to change. It was that feeling of complete emptiness, having achieved something and felt nothing, which could be really depressing. Like if you have ever encountered that, which I have, it's sort of like this big wave washes over you of like, what have I been doing? Who am I? I'm feeling nothing, which can be kind of scary, but it was that feeling and that experience that brought him to change. And this is why I always say, like, change is not always this like soft, wonderful thing. It certainly can be, but oftentimes change brings about some discomfort, some conflict, and some challenge. And so when Henry was confronted with this emptiness, he knew something had to change. Something already had changed in him at that point. So for us, the parallel is clear. We can have all the intuitive ability in the world, but if we're operating from unhealed wounds, unexamined motivations, or unintegrated shadows, our quote vision will be distorted. Our vision for ourselves, our ability to see without eyes, it's all distorted. And we might be picking up real information with our intuitive abilities, that is, but interpreting everything through a clouded lens. What I love most about this film is really, frankly, Henry's transformation. Once he confronts his emptiness and he chooses to use his gifts for something beyond himself, which is anonymously building orphanages and hospitals, everything shifts. His external actions finally align with an internal clarity that he had never had before. He's still using the same ability, still accumulating money, but now his vision is clear. He can see not just through objects, but into what the world needs. He can see his own purpose. And to me, this is integration. And this is what happens when we do our inner work alongside developing our intuitive gifts. Our ability to perceive expands because we're no longer looking through the distorted lens of our unhealed parts. We can see more clearly, read energy or situations more accurately, deliver messages with greater precision because we've cleared out the static of our own unintegrated stuff. So really, I'm looking at this from the perspective of working as an evidential psychic medium, but anybody that's interested in any kind of self-development, wherever you're, whatever you're approaching this film from, whatever position, I think you're going to find it really meaningful. It's almost like it makes me think of like a parable or um those stories that we read as kids that have all those moral tales about knowing who you are and what you want and what your North Star is, what's going to guide your actions. And the reality is that we spend a lot of time not knowing that. And it's okay to not know that. And it's something we're going to have to consistently and regularly tend and revisit as we age and as we change. And that's a wonderful practice to get into, and so it's a great way to take care of yourself too. I'm recommending this film not just because it's beautifully made, though it is. Anderson's visual style is stunning. I do enjoy his movies, but because it's a parable about something we all navigate, the relationship between our gifts and our character. Having intuitive ability doesn't automatically make us wise, healed, or compassionate. The ability itself is neutral. It's what we do with it and the inner work we pair it with that matters. The film is asking us to consider, what are we using our gifts for, service or ego? What unhealed parts might be clouding our perception? Are we doing the inner work required to hold these abilities with integrity? And does our outer work align with our own inner clarity? Henry's journey um, from seeing through the cards to seeing truth, from literal sight to intuitive spiritual insight, is the journey that we're all on. Learning to truly see requires more than developing the ability. It requires healing, integration, and a willingness to use what we see in service of something greater than ourselves. And here's my invitation: watch this short, gorgeous film, let it sit with you, or you sit with it, and notice what it brings up. And maybe ask yourself, what am I not seeing, and what unintegrated parts of myself might be filtering my perception, and how can I align my gifts with my highest purpose? Because the real magic isn't in seeing without your eyes, it's in seeing clearly with your whole integrated healed self. And I'm not saying healed in terms of a destination, that's something that we can just achieve and it's stagnant. I mean the ongoing healing of the self. And as I mentioned, I think that this was on Netflix and it's based on a Roald Dahl story. And once you watch it, you'll want to talk about it with everybody. So drop a comment if you want to talk about it with me, and enjoy. And I want to add in closing that if you want to do some of the self work, I have in past episodes talked about understanding what your essentials are, which will help you kind of find your inner compass and your North Star, and understanding how limiting beliefs can impact our clear sight, and also some content around boundaries. These are very helpful tools to the work that we're talking about here in this episode. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my blog at bloomingwand.com. I have some tools in those blogs as well as access to worksheets that might be helpful for you. This is my service to others. These are free tools that anybody can use. Hopefully, they'll be helpful to you. And just make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. And I hope that you're signed up for my newsletter because I share all these freebies and these tools very freely in my newsletter, as well as here at times. And do share your thoughts about the movie, your thoughts about this episode with me. You know, I love to hear from you. And I think you know what I'm going to say now. Take good care of yourselves, get those journals out, and I'll see you soon.